Hi everyone, and welcome to match 1, game 8, the last game in the match. And the score is 6-6 to 7, one away, so double match point, right? DMP. Similar to the last game, but even more so, gammons don't count here, right? You only need 1 point, and there's no cube, obviously. Checker moves are somewhat influenced by this lack of gammons. Okay, you can afford to play bigger, bolder, a little more riskily, shall we say? Not recklessly, but one of the things that you'll see in this particular game compared to previous episodes is the idea of potentially leaving your anchor earlier than one would normally do, even though there are some risks of being pointed on and stuff like that, if the position calls for it. Anyways, we come down to this exciting finish of 6-6 to 7, and I hope you enjoy the game and learn some things about playing double match point in a backgammon match. Okay. Thanks again, and don't forget to leave some comments, suggestions. If there's something you feel I can improve, do let me know. Enjoy and learn. Thanks. Okay, let's start game 8. The score is 6-6 to 7, so we're at double match point, DMP. No cube and no gammons, just a 1-point game. White opens with 4-1 and splits, and black correctly points on white. Running is generally a good plan at DMP, but when you can make a point instead, that's probably the right play. This is kind of interesting. Basically, white could bring down another checker. He's not afraid of having too many blots at this point. But this is also reasonable. It does expose him to some attacks in black's homeboard, but white would like to maybe make an anchor, and this is one of the better ways to do that. Get those checkers moving, I suppose. And it does limit the number of blots, so it's not bad either, especially since black's 8-point is kind of stripped here, right? So less danger if black hits with that, and then there are return shots. Okay, and black does indeed point on white, but white is able to make the advanced anchor. And that gives him a slight advantage because black's back checkers haven't moved from their original place yet. And of course, these it's true that black has a stronger homeboard, but these deep points mean that black's play is somewhat less flexible. Okay, black rolls a 5-2. It's a good roll to make the remake the 8-point and split the back checkers. And white is able to make his own 5-point, which is great. 2-2 is a good roll for black, and he correctly anchors up and establishes a blocking point on the 11-point. But notice that making the 4-point, right, and having a 4-point homeboard is definitely something to consider here. Making the anchor at DMP is not so vital. Maybe preserving some flexibility is perhaps a little more important. An anchor is not a bad thing, but flexibility is also one of the principles at DMP. But in any case, XG does approve of black's move. Nice roll by white, establishing a 4'. And yeah, one of the issues previously was this idea of one thing just to watch out for is when you have too many points, right? And if you have too many points with no spare checkers, then your position's likely to deteriorate. That's why this is such a good move. It gives black some spare checkers on his points, and can allow him, for example, to make the 4-point without necessarily losing a point. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. This principle of too many points. It's good to make points, but sometimes if you have a lot of points with no spares on them, your position could deteriorate in the next roll or two. But 5-2 is a good roll to avoid that. Now, this is an interesting moment. I'm sure, white played this kind of automatically, right? Most people would play this automatically, but XG says that it's a mistake and that, in fact, white should play more boldly, slotting the 4-point in this case. Black does have a blot in his home board, so the risk isn't as great. And, when you have an anchor in your home board and an empty point in front of the anchor, right? So here we have this 4-point that's empty. It's fairly difficult to make this point, isn't it? And yet it's a huge advantage if you can make that point in front of the anchor. It kind of does reduce shots in the future. So that's one of the reasons I think that XG says it's worth taking the risk and slotting the 4-point and leaving an outfield blot as well. But even notice 13-11 and 13-10 are also very big moves. And XG says these are better than the safe play as well. So again, at DMP, what we do, we have to be careful about making automatic moves. Like, I agree, this would be a normal move if you were afraid of getting gammoned, at certain scores. But at DMP, if we have time, we do need to consider alternative plays from the usual plays because of those lack of gammons and the lack of a cube. Okay. Here's another situation, perhaps, that's slightly different in DMP. Okay. Black's move is fine. Of course, you want to make the 4-point and establish a 4-point home board, but XG does have a slight preference for breaking the 8-point and keeping that, maintaining that 6-point block, from the 11-point. The block of white's anchor. It's interesting, yeah. And of course, there's a certain risk, right? If white does, roll a 3 in this case and hits the blot on the 8, then black does have return shots with a stronger home board. So it kind of makes sense, but it's close. It's a close decision. Black leaves a blot in any case, but he does, with this play, he maintains his blocking points as well, his blocking point on the 8 and blocking point on the 11. So also interesting. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, this perhaps, this move perhaps is okay, but it's maybe a little front-loaded, okay? This idea of moving the spare checker from the 8 to the 5. This concept of bringing your checkers too close to an anchor or something is kind of called front-loading. And there are some reasons, obviously 1s and 2s are useful, but not a lot of other roles, and large roles don't play as flexibly. So that's part of the reason, I suppose. But in general, the alternative recommended move, it also brings more builders to focus on that 4-point and try to make that 4-point, right? So I think that's probably the main consideration here, is you've got more rolls next turn if you don't get hit to make that 4-point. And keep in mind, there are equal number of shots, whether you keep your blot on the 13-point or move it to the 10-point. It's still basically 2 shots out of 36, right? So there's not an increased risk of moving the blot closer. Right, and this is one of the key moments, I think, in this position. Okay, so black has the stronger home board, right? And black is actually ahead in the race. And so this kind of indicates that black should think about running, okay? And as you can see, it's a blunder for black not to run in this case. It does seem like a very bold move. And I think in one of the previous episodes, if not more than one, I've kind of emphasized this idea that XG really doesn't like you to run off your anchors, right, prematurely. But DMP is a special case, isn't it? Where, one of the reasons why running off the anchor is often not so good is the increase in gammon chances. Having an anchor kind of secures you more against gammons, okay? But at DMP, this is not an issue. So running off the anchor is more often possible, okay? And don't forget, black basically, these sixes, don't know how many more sixes are going to come up, and you don't know whether a more favorable situation to run might come up if white gains more outfield control, right? So this is actually a great chance, especially since you can clean up this blot, right, with the 1. And you maintain that connection between your 2 checkers. So if white hits, then there's a possibility of return shot if white doesn't pick and pass, that kind of thing. Okay, so this is partly because of the race, right? If black keeps sitting back and waiting, then his racing advantage, he's going to have to bury checkers, and his racing advantage won't be as important. And maybe he'll have to run off that anchor at a more inopportune time. So yeah, this was a key mistake in this game, really. But not easy to see because of, look at all the builders, right? White is ready to attack and pounce on the checker that's left behind. But there are rolls, white is going to be not too happy to hit loose in this position with black's home board so strong, and there are rolls that don't hit. So yeah, so a missed opportunity by black here, but not easy to see, one that's particular for DMP. And as you can see, black's chosen move is to bury a checker, right, deep. And even, in DMP, that's kind of something you want to generally avoid, right? Sometimes we do bury checkers because we need to be safe. We need to play safe. But if you don't really need to play safe, like in DMP, then really hesitate about burying those checkers. The flexibility is more important. Righto, so not a lot of options here. White just safeties the blot and waits. XG says it's possible again to slot that 4-point. But white decides just to wait and see, especially since black's checkers, right, here again are stripped, right, and this is stripped. So it is possible that this is stripped as well. So black's position will get worse next turn, right? So the kind of thinking is, why leave black a blot when, if you just sit and wait, it's possible something bad might happen. to black and his position. You know, he might open up a shot of his own or something like that. Okay. Black's position doesn't exactly deteriorate, but he has to give up his blocking point and just establish that sort of mini prime, a 3-point prime. And white rolls well and is able to jump out and over, right? And more importantly, white has a pretty good control over the outfield, right? So notice now, if black chooses to jump out, you know, so with the 6, black rolls a 6-1. This, as you can see, it's not, you know, it's a mistake to jump out at this point. Not a huge mistake, okay? It's a 50.05 kind of mistake, but still, because of white's outfield control, this is much riskier, okay, compared to the previous opportunity to jump out. So instead, black correctly makes the 1 point, strengthens the home board, and hopes for a shot. Or, you know, again, the race is definitely within reach here, though, of course, to run, you know, from that back anchor involves some risk, unless he gets double 6s, of course. Okay, double 2s. White's very happy to make the 4-point here, but at this point, with such a strong black home board, what white really needs to minimize shots. You know, there's no need to take a risk of getting hit by a fly shot. And white's chosen move here gives an extra shot compared to this roll, which basically gives 6-1 and double 6s, right? So, and this one gives that extra shot of 6-4 and 6-3, so 4 shots out of 36 as opposed to 3 shots out of 36. And you know, you don't want to lose the game because of giving your opponent 1 extra shot, that kind of miscalculation. Okay, at this point, it's true, you know, you don't have to you know, in DMP, you don't have to worry about gammons and that, but you do still have to calculate shots, and you're not really gaining anything by giving your opponent an extra shot here. So you might as well reduce the shots. So a mistake by white. Okay, black keeps rolling those 6s, but again, so dangerous for him to jump out. Okay, just too many shots coming at him here, right? So better to sit and wait, especially since the race is still very much in play, right? White is going to have to at some point break his prime, and then maybe black will have a chance to run if he doesn't get a shot, because the race is so close, even though of course he's bearing some checkers and stuff. Okay, white correctly safeties those blots. And now black sees that, yes, now is the time to make a run for it. Luckily, he didn't roll 6-4 the previous time, right? That would have been a hit. Okay, yeah, at this point, not running is not great both for the race, and basically your home board is going to start crunching, and then, you know, not only do you have a lot of buried checkers for the race, but you know, your shot equity will go down because your home board's going to crunch. So if you don't run now, are you going to have another chance to? It's hard to say. Now is the time to run and abandon the anchor. Again, very much a DMP play. And woohoo! White comes in with the double 5s. Yeah. And it seems to be a slight mistake. White thinks that he's playing safely here by just hitting on the 3-point. Okay. But XG recommends making the 3 and 2 points and paying off to 1/6. Yeah, you might say, why? Why? It seems like White's made in the shade after this roll, right? He's well on the way to victory. But keep in mind that things can happen in backgammon, right? And there can be changes, just through a single roll. So what you think might be safe, if you think, oh, I'm going to play completely safe, but try to look ahead to the position, right? And in this position, after the hit, White's 6s don't play very well, as we'll see. Okay, so whereas if you make the 3 and 2 point, then there's obviously 6s you can play from the back here, right? So there's a lot more flexibility, but you have to pay off to those 2 shots, the 1/6. Okay, so Black dances and things are looking quite dire. But then lo and behold, right? What did I say about the 6? White has to play a 6 and just cross his fingers. Now, the good news, of course, is that if Black hits, he's still behind a 5', and so he has to roll 1 and then a 6. And Black does have, the gap in his own home board. Okay, so it's definitely not a total disaster if he gets hit, but if he had played differently on the previous move, this wouldn't be an issue, this 6-1, right? So sometimes you have to look ahead and think how flexible you are and how certain numbers are going to play, right? 6-1, 6-2, 6-3 are all not good rolls, right? And even 6-5 is fine, but it does leave that gap on the 2 point. So something to learn, right, in terms of safety now versus safety in the long term. Yeah, and especially when you're setting up your position for bearing in, you do have to consider this safety in the long run and having a decent structure and possibly taking some risks, right, to achieve that good structure. Small risks, of course. But luckily, Black misses. Okay, and White is able to cover. And Black dances again. White brings in his last 2 checkers. Black enters. Hopes for one last shot. Okay. 5-4. This is the best way. Just rip off a couple checkers. There's basically no roll in the next roll that leaves a shot. And if you look at the next alternative, 6-1, 4 off, it looks perhaps a little safer, right? But by starting to clear the 6 point, but 6-4 would immediately leave a shot. And so you want to aim for this what we call a 0 position, right? Where and the next roll doesn't leave a shot, especially with Black's position, possibly deteriorating in the future, right? The home board, that is. Okay, Black comes in and then get the sort of the coup de grace, right? A double 4 is just a tremendous joker and basically seals the win. Not guaranteed, but pretty close, right? Okay, and White rolls a double 1 and just plays completely safe. There's very little chance that Black will catch up now, even if he gets in with a double 5 or double 6, and just takes off a checker. And takes off another checker and another checker, and Black comes in and resigns. I think he could have played on a little, right? There's like a very slim marginal chance, so you might as well play on. Who knows? I don't know if you've had it, but I've had a couple positions that have seemed like just incredible, where I've been able to come back. And I suppose I've had opponents who've done that as well. So you might as well play on until it's absolutely clear that there's zero chance. Okay, but in any case. Black resigns and white wins the match 7-6. Quite an exciting match. And the last game was quite interesting as well, right? And some DMP decisions are interesting, where you have to, jumping from that anchor is really interesting and seems to have made the difference. Okay. So yeah, in terms of the total summary, right? We have the entire session, and Black played well, right? 7.2 PR. White did better, and it does seem like Black lost quite a bit of equity on his checker moves, right? And some takes also were ill-advised. And Black also lost White also lost some equity in terms of the doubles. But in any case, strong, a good match by White, and Black hopefully will be watching this video and making some adjustments to his own game and some improvements. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that. That's match 1. And some really exciting games and some good learning points. And keep your eyes open. Match 2, also a really amazing, exciting match, will be coming up. Hopefully, I'll post the next episode in a week or so for match 2, game 1. Hope to see you then. And in the meantime, if you want to post some comments or suggestions, anything you think could be improved with this YouTube channel, please let me know. And thanks for your support.